If you walk into any mega garden center today, you are surrounded by walls of expensive plastic jugs, synthetic fertilizers, and chemical sprays that promise to be the secret to a thriving harvest. But the biggest secret in the entire gardening world is that the most powerful, evidence-backed plant booster on the planet is currently sitting in your kitchen pantry, completely unnoticed. And it costs less than $1. For generations, we have been conditioned to look upward at our plants, focusing all our energy on spraying the leaves, treating the blossoms, and hoping the fruit swells. Yet everything a plant ultimately becomes is decided in the dark, 12 inches beneath the soil line. When a tomato plant wilts in the punishing August heat, or its leaves turn a sickly yellow, dumping chemical nitrogen on top of the dirt is just a temporary bandage for a fundamentally starved engine. The real magic happens when you stop feeding the plant from the outside and start unlocking the biological power of the root zone, turning a thin, stringy root system into a massive, fibrous explosion of growth that is 2 to 3 times the size of anything grown with store-bought chemistry. Before we dive deep into how to brew this incredible solution right on your kitchen counter, I want to invite you to join our growing family by subscribing to the channel so you never miss out on these practical, old-school growing secrets. It truly warms my heart to see our community come together, and I would love for you to pause for a second and drop your location in the comments below. Whether you are tending a small balcony pot in the heart of a bustling city, managing a beautiful kitchen garden in a quiet district, or working a sprawling farming field out in the countryside, we have passionate growers tuning in from every corner of the globe, and knowing exactly where you are sharing your journey from helps me tailor these time-tested remedies for the unique climates and soils we are all working with. The secret ingredient we are talking about is plain, dry baker's yeast, known scientifically as Saccharomyces cerevisiae, a humble single-celled fungus that nearly every household in America already has tucked away next to the flour and baking powder. While our grandmothers used these tiny packets exclusively to make bread rise on a Sunday morning, modern peer-reviewed agricultural research has quietly revealed that this simple, pantry staple does things to a root system that synthetic products simply cannot replicate. When you walk down the store aisles looking for a rooting hormone, you will find small plastic tubs of laboratory-made copies of plant hormones that cost a pretty penny, but yeast produces these exact same signaling molecules in a completely living organic form for pennies. The reason you will never find a living yeast root booster sitting on a retail store shelf has nothing to do with a corporate conspiracy and everything to do with basic physics. The moment living yeast is activated in water, it begins breathing and releasing carbon dioxide gas, meaning any sealed plastic bottle sitting in a warm warehouse would bulge, leak, or violently burst within 48 hours. Because commercial products must be completely dead and shelf-stable to sit in a store for months, this powerful remedy can only exist if you make it fresh in your kitchen, using it within 30 minutes of preparation. The moment this living brew touches your soil, 3 extraordinary biological processes trigger simultaneously to completely transform the underground environment. First, the active yeast cells begin producing indole 3-acetic acid, which is the absolute master signaling molecule in the plant kingdom that tells individual root cells to stretch, divide, and aggressively push out new lateral branches. Second, as these cells multiply, they release a rich feast of pre-digested amino acids, B vitamins, and essential trace minerals like zinc, iron, and magnesium directly into the earth. These are not locked-up nutrients that the plant has to waste precious metabolic energy breaking down. They are delivered in a form that fine root hairs can absorb almost on contact, creating the agricultural equivalent of a direct intravenous nutrient feed for a stressed plant. Finally, the yeast cells physically occupy the space around the root zone, forming a living protective shield that outcompetes harmful soil-borne pathogens and shields your crops from devastating, damping-off diseases. But the most mind-blowing discovery occurred when scientists put living roots under high-powered laser microscopes and realized that roots are not just passive drinking straws sipping up liquid. The roots are actually eating. They physically engulf the live yeast cells, pull them inside their own cell walls, strip them of their rich internal nutrients using a mild oxidative pulse, and then push the surviving cells back out into the dirt to gather more minerals in a continuous, beautiful cycle called rhizophagy. To bring this incredible biological phenomenon to life in your own backyard or farm, you only need 3 simple ingredients that you can find in any local market for under $1. You will need 1 liter of non-chlorinated water, 2 tablespoons of plain dry baker's yeast, which is roughly equivalent to 2 standard packets, and 1 tablespoon of ordinary white sugar. The first step is where most people quietly fail before they even start. And that is mastering the water temperature. The water must be lukewarm, ideally between 105 and 115 degrees Fahrenheit, because if you see steam rising from the surface, the water is too hot and will kill the living fungus instantly. If the water feels cool to the touch, the yeast will simply stay asleep, and the brew will fail to activate. A reliable old-fashioned trick for those without a kitchen thermometer is to boil a full kettle of water. Pour it into a clean, large glass jar, and let it sit uncovered on your counter for 15 minutes, until it cools down to a comfortable, skin-warm temperature that you can easily touch with the back of your wrist. Once your water is at that perfect lukewarm sweet spot, ensure your glass jar has at least 1.5 liters of capacity to give the mixture room to breathe. Pour the warm water in, add your 2 tablespoons of yeast along with the single tablespoon of white sugar, and stir gently with a clean spoon until the crystals completely dissolve into a cloudy, beige solution. It is vital to understand that plant roots have absolutely no use for refined white sugar, so we are not adding this ingredient to feed the crop itself. The sugar serves strictly as a wake-up alarm for the dormant yeast, giving them an immediate burst of energy to break their deep slumber and begin generating those precious growth hormones and amino acids. By the time you actually pour this liquid into your garden, the fungus will have consumed the sugar entirely, leaving nothing behind to attract unwanted pests. Now comes the critical step of covering the jar, and you must never, under any circumstances, seal it with a tight plastic or metal lid. Because the waking yeast is rapidly breathing and generating carbon dioxide, a tightly sealed glass jar will build up extreme pressure and can crack or shatter across your counter without warning. Instead, gently drape a clean paper towel or a piece of breathable cloth over the opening and secure it tightly with a simple rubber band. This allows the built-up gases to escape perfectly, while keeping out floating dust, fruit flies, and curious insects. Take the jar and place it in a dark, warm spot like a closed pantry shelf, a kitchen cabinet, or a dark corner of your counter covered with a folded dish towel, because direct sunlight delivers harsh ultraviolet rays that can severely damage the sensitive cells before they finish their work. Let the mixture sit undisturbed for 30 to 40 minutes. As you check on it, you will know the concentrate is alive, active, and ready when you see a thick, foamy beige cap forming beautifully across the surface, and a steady, mesmerizing stream of tiny bubbles rising rapidly through the liquid. The air around the jar will fill with a mild, comforting, bread-like aroma that feels instantly familiar to anyone who has ever baked a fresh loaf of bread. But before a single drop of this living tonic touches your soil, you must follow the non-negotiable rule of dilution. This fresh concentrate is far too potent to be applied directly to plants. At full strength, the sheer density of the yeast population can briefly shock your existing soil microbiome and damage delicate young root hairs through sudden osmotic pressure. The exact dilution ratio you want to use is 1:10, meaning you will stir your 1 liter of active yeast concentrate into 10 liters of plain, non-chlorinated water, yielding a grand total of 11 liters of finished, ready-to-use liquid biostimulant. If you are a home gardener or a small-scale homesteader, rainwater collected in a clean outdoor barrel is the absolute gold standard for this mix. If you only have access to municipal tap water, simply fill up a large bucket and let it sit uncovered on your porch for 24 hours prior to mixing, which allows the harsh chlorine gases to safely evaporate into the air, so they do not harm your beneficial fungus. For medium-scale farmers managing larger acreage, You can easily scale this recipe up to fit 50-gallon drums or automated fertigation tanks, maintaining that same vital 1-to-10 ratio to treat entire rows of crops efficiently without skyrocketing your seasonal input costs. When you head out to apply this solution, remember that you are pouring it directly onto the soil at the base of the plant, not spraying it on the leaves, because these specific hormones and predigested nutrients are biologically designed to function at the root surface. Pour the diluted mix slowly and deliberately around the main stem, soaking the earth thoroughly to a depth of about 6 inches so the living microbes can migrate down into the root zone without causing any pooling or flooding. If you are tending a mature, heavy-feeding tomato, pepper, or eggplant in a kitchen garden, roughly 1 liter of the diluted mixture per plant is the perfect amount to saturate their root footprint. For delicate young seedlings, container pots on a balcony, or fresh garden transplants, a single cup of the liquid poured gently around the base is more than enough to stimulate growth. What truly separates a casual experiment from a mind-blowing, transformative harvest is understanding the precise timing of these applications. Because this remedy is a strategic biostimulant rather than a weekly fertilizer. To achieve professional-grade results without disrupting the natural microbial balance of your soil, you only want to apply this mixture exactly 3 times across the entire growing season. The first critical application happens on the very day of transplanting. The exact moment a young seedling is pulled from its cozy starter plug and buried into the open garden soil or a larger farm bed, it enters a phase of severe environmental shock. Delivering a rich flood of yeast-produced auxins right to the disturbed roots at this exact moment triggers rapid lateral root expansion, allowing the plant to anchor itself quickly and completely eliminating that sad, droopy transplant wilt. You will notice that while untreated seedlings flop over in the afternoon heat, yeast-treated plants keep their leaves standing proud, firm, and vibrant green through the first critical week. The second application window opens at the very first sign of flowering. This is the hormonal turning point, where the plant calculates exactly how much energy and structural support it has underground to commit to producing fruit. By providing a second wave of microbial stimulation, at this precise moment, you ensure the plant develops a massively expanded root architecture, capable of holding on to its blossoms, resulting in fewer dropped flowers, significantly better pollination outcomes, and a much higher potential yield. The third and final application is delivered right when the first small fruits begin to visibly form on the vine. At this stage, the crop is under immense metabolic pressure to draw heavy loads of minerals upward to swell those fruits to full size. This final drench provides an immediate, accessible feast of amino acids and trace elements, helping the plant meet its heavy nutritional demands smoothly without forcing it to deplete its own internal energy reserves. While this simple pantry remedy works wonders, it is important to maintain realistic expectations and avoid a few common mistakes that can quietly ruin your hard work. A single drench will not miraculously revive a dying, diseased plant overnight, as the visible structural changes manifest gradually beneath the surface. Within the first week, you will notice improved leaf turgor during hot afternoons. Within 3 weeks, the main stems will visibly thicken, and by the end of the season, when you finally pull the spent crops from the earth, you will be greeted by a root ball that is undeniably massive, dense, and interwoven with countless fine feeder roots. To keep your brew pristine, never use water hotter than 120 degrees, which kills the fungus and causes the mixture to smell unpleasantly sour rather than sweet and yeasty. Additionally, always ensure your yeast is fresh, as packets that have been sitting in the back of a cabinet for more than 2 years will often stay completely flat and dormant, requiring you to start fresh with a vibrant packet. Never try to store your diluted solution in a bottle for later use. It must be applied to your land within 24 hours of mixing, because past that window, the living population crashes, the liquid ferments into alcohol, and it can actually stress your delicate root tissue rather than support it. Lastly, always time your applications for the cool, quiet hours of the early morning or late evening. Pouring this mixture into the soil during the blistering heat of midday stresses the living microbes and reduces their effectiveness, whereas applying it to cool, damp earth allows the yeast to colonize the root zone under optimal conditions. While heavy-feeding nightshades like tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants show the most dramatic responses to this pantry recipe, you can easily apply it across a wide variety of crops in your garden or farm. Cucumbers, zucchini, and corn show fantastic structural gains, and strawberries respond beautifully with vigorous runner production when drenched during their active growth phase. If you are growing rows of leafy greens like spinach, kale, or Swiss chard, applying this solution during the seedling and transplant phase yields thick, lush, deep green leaves that remain crisp and resilient. Even traditional root crops like carrots and beets can benefit significantly, provided you apply the mixture strictly during their early establishment window to build the subterranean engine before the actual edible root begins to swell. There is an incredible, profound sense of satisfaction that comes from stepping away from commercial chemical products and realizing that the most powerful tool for a magnificent harvest has been sitting right on your kitchen shelf this entire time. I want to say a massive, heartfelt thank you for spending this time with me today. And if you found this practical, old-school gardening wisdom valuable, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and share your specific location in the comments below. Whether you are managing a handful of pots on a small apartment balcony or cultivating acres of fertile fields, your presence is what makes this global community so incredibly special. Keep a close eye out for our very next video, where we will be breaking down another extraordinary, completely natural homemade preparation that pairs beautifully with yeast water and works through a totally different soil mechanism to effortlessly double your flower count. Until then, may the soil in your beds stay rich and full of life. May every single plant you nurture hold deep into the earth,